The phone rang at 2:47 a.m. I remember the exact time because I'd been staring at the ceiling for 3 hours, watching the red numbers on my alarm clock tick forward. 3 days had passed since I found Jackson's note. 3 days since I'd frozen our accounts, filed the divorce papers, and boarded a plane to Santorini with his mistress's credit card information still fresh in my mind. The voice on the other end wasn't his. It was deeper, official. "Mrs. Vincent? This is Detective Ramon Blackwood with the state police. We need you to come identify a body." I sat up slowly, my silk nightgown sliding against the Egyptian cotton sheets of my hotel room. Through the window, the Aegean Sea sparkled under moonlight, peaceful and endless. "A body." My voice came out steady. Too steady, perhaps. "Your husband was reported missing 3 days ago by a woman named Priscilla Danes. She said he never showed up to their plan meeting. We found him this morning." I let the silence stretch, counting my heartbeats. "Oh, that's what we're trying to determine, ma'am. How soon can you return?" I looked at my manicured nails, still perfect from yesterday's spa treatment. "I'll catch the next flight." After hanging up, I walked to the balcony and breathed in the salt air. Somewhere below, waves crashed against ancient rocks. I thought about the note Jackson had left, those 7 words that were supposed to destroy me. "Don't look for me. I need freedom." Well, I hadn't looked for him. And it seemed he'd found all the freedom he could handle. But let me start from the beginning. Let me tell you how a woman who once would have died for her husband learned to live without him. And perhaps how he learned too late what real freedom cost. Before we continue, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. We love seeing how far our family of revenge seekers reaches. And if you're new here, hit subscribe. Your support helps us uncover and share even more jaw-dropping tales of betrayal, payback, and justice. Now, let's get back into the story. My name is Edith Vincent, and until 3 months ago I believed in fairy tales. Not the Disney kind with singing mice and pumpkin carriages. I believed in the grown-up version. That if you loved someone enough, if you gave them everything, they'd love you back with the same fierce devotion. I believed that marriage meant something sacred, that the words, "till death do us part," were more than pretty sounds we made in front of our families. I was 34 when everything changed. Young enough to start over, old enough to know better. But knowing better and doing better are two different beasts entirely. Our house on Crescent Ridge Drive looked like something from a magazine. 2 stories of red brick and white columns, with a garden I'd cultivated myself over 7 years of marriage. Roses climbed the eastern wall. Jackson's favorite, he'd said, though I later learned he couldn't tell a rose from a carnation. The kitchen had marble countertops I'd saved for 3 years to afford, and the living room held a piano I played every Sunday while he read his newspaper. That was our routine. Sunday mornings meant Bach and breakfast, his coffee black, mine with too much cream. He'd complain about his boss, Conrad, who apparently had it out for him. I'd listen, offering suggestions he'd wave away with increasing irritation. "You don't understand corporate politics, Edith," he'd say, not unkindly but with that particular condescension that made me feel small. "It's not like your little library job." My little library job. Head librarian at the city's main branch, managing 12 employees and $1 million budget. But to Jackson, if it didn't come with a corner office and an expense account, it wasn't real work. I should have seen the signs earlier. The late nights that grew later. The gym membership he suddenly needed despite our home gym. The new cologne that appeared one day, something sharp and aggressive that made me sneeze. The way he'd angle his phone away when texting, thumb moving fast across the screen. But I was blind. Love does that sometimes. It puts blinders on you like a horse, keeping you moving forward on a path even when the scenery on either side is screaming warnings. The day before he left, we'd had dinner at Romano's, our anniversary restaurant. 7 years. The traditional gift is wool, but I'd bought him a watch. A Rolex I'd been saving for, secretly skimming money from my little library job for 2 years. He'd opened the box and his face had done something strange. A flicker of guilt, maybe, or disgust. Later, I'd wonder if he was thinking about her even then. Priscilla with her yoga instructor body and her bachelor's degree in communications that she'd somehow parlayed into a marketing director position at his company. "It's too much," he'd said, closing the box. "Nothing's too much for you," I'd replied, reaching across the table for his hand. He'd pulled away to signal the waiter. That night we'd made love. Or rather, he'd performed the act while I tried to convince myself the distance I felt was imagination. His hands on my body felt like they were touching someone else. His eyes stayed closed, and when he finished he rolled away immediately, mumbling about an early meeting. I'd laid there in the dark, feeling the space between us like a canyon, not knowing that by morning, it would be infinite. Tuesday, October 3rd, 6:23 a.m. I woke to an empty bed, which wasn't unusual. Jackson often left early, though his meeting wasn't until 9. I made coffee, humming a piece from Chopin I'd been practicing. The morning sun painted golden stripes across our hardwood floors, and somewhere outside, birds were discussing the day's agenda. The note was on the kitchen counter, held down by his coffee mug. The one I'd bought him that said "World's Best Husband" in fading letters. 7 words. That's all he gave me after 7 years. Don't look for me. I need freedom. I read it 3 times before the words made sense. Even then, they felt like a foreign language, syllables that couldn't possibly mean what they seemed to mean. My first instinct was to call him. My finger hovered over his contact photo. A picture from our honeymoon in Bali, both of us sunburned and laughing. The call went straight to voicemail. "This is Jackson Vincent. Leave a message." His professional voice. The one he used for people who didn't matter. I hung up. For 20 minutes I stood in that kitchen, still in my nightgown, bare feet growing cold against the tile. The coffee maker gurgled and hissed, filling the house with the smell of morning normalcy while my world tilted off its axis. Then I saw his wedding ring. It sat next to the note, catching the light like a tiny accusation. I picked it up, feeling its weight or lack thereof. Such a small thing to represent such large promises. That's when the rage started. Not the hot, explosive kind that makes you throw plates and scream. This was different. This was ice forming in my veins, a cold clarity that made everything sharp and bright and possible. He needed freedom? Fine. I walked upstairs to his office, my movements calm and deliberate. His laptop was gone, of course, but he'd left his desktop computer. Jackson, for all his corporate swagger, was terrible with passwords. He used the same one for everything. Vincent 2016, the year we married. I logged into his email first. The messages from Priscilla went back 6 months. 6 months of thinking about you, and can't wait to see you, and last night was incredible. 6 months of planning their escape, of him promising to leave his suffocating marriage to his controlling wife. Controlling. That was rich. I'd given him everything: space, time, money, my body, my dreams. I'd shrunk myself to fit into the corners of his life, and somehow that had been too much. But the emails revealed more than just an affair. They revealed plans. A joint bank account he'd opened without my knowledge, slowly siphoning money from our savings. A condo he'd put a deposit on across town. A job offer in Seattle that Priscilla had arranged through her connections. They were going to disappear together. Start fresh. Leave me with nothing but questions and a mortgage I couldn't afford alone. I printed everything. Every email, every bank statement, every receipt I could find. The printer hummed and churned, spitting out evidence like an eager accomplice. Then I made my second cup of coffee and got to work. People think revenge is a dish best served cold. They're wrong. Revenge is a dish best served with surgical precision, garnished with poetic justice, and presented with a smile that never quite reaches your eyes. I called in sick to work. First time in 3 years. My assistant, Dolores, sounded concerned. "Are you all right, honey? You sound different." "Just a bug," I lied smoothly. "Should be back in a few days." Next I called our lawyer. Well, my lawyer now. Sterling Rothschild was old school, the kind of attorney who still wore 3-piece suits and kept brandy in his desk drawer. He'd handled my mother's estate, and more importantly, he despised men who abandoned their wives. "Edith, darling, what can I do for you?" His voice was warm bourbon and expensive cigars. "I need a divorce lawyer. The best you know." Pause. What has that fool done? I loved Sterling for not pretending to be surprised. He left. This morning. With nothing but a note. "I see. And do you know where he's gone?" "No," I said, which was technically true. I knew who he was with, but not where. "And I don't care. I want to file immediately. Today if possible. Consider it done. Miranda Steele is who you want. She's a barracuda in Prada. I'll call her now." While Sterling worked his magic, I went to the bank. Our joint account held $47,000. Years of careful saving for the dream vacation to Europe we'd never take. The house down payment fund. The maybe baby fund we'd stopped discussing 2 years ago when Jackson declared he wasn't ready for that kind of responsibility. The teller, a young woman with kind eyes and elaborate nails, looked at me with concern when I requested to freeze the account. "Is everything all right, Mrs. Vincent?" "Perfect," I said, sliding the separation papers across the marble counter. "Just taking care of some housekeeping." With the account frozen, Jackson wouldn't be able to access our money. His personal account, I knew from my morning research, held less than $3,000. His escape fund was in that joint account with Priscilla, but that only had $15,000, not enough for the grand new life they'd planned. Next stop, the phone store. I removed Jackson from our family plan, effective immediately. Let Priscilla pay for his unlimited data. Let her deal with his habit of falling asleep to YouTube videos that ate through gigabytes like a starved teenager at a buffet. By noon I'd cancelled his credit cards, the ones in my name that he was an authorized user on. I'd changed the locks on the house. I'd had his precious BMW towed from wherever he'd left it at Priscilla's apartment complex, the GPS tracker I'd installed months ago when I first suspected the affair finally proving useful, and returned to the dealership since it was leased in my name. But the best part was yet to come. I drove to Priscilla's apartment complex, Sunset Gardens, a pretentious name for a building that faced a parking lot. Her social media was a goldmine of information. The woman documented everything: her morning lattes, her yoga poses, her new boyfriend's hands holding wine glasses in artistic lighting. Her car was there, a white Mercedes she probably couldn't afford. I parked across the street and waited, but not for them. I was waiting for confirmation from my phone that his cards had been declined at whatever romantic restaurant they'd gone to for lunch. At 1:47 p.m. my phone buzzed. 3 declined transactions at the Ivy. Perfect. I could imagine the scene. Jackson, all smooth confidence, waving away the waitress's concerned expression. Trying another card. Then another. The slow dawning horror as he realized what I'd done. Priscilla's confused face morphing into embarrassment, then anger. But I wasn't done. That evening, while they were probably fighting about money in her overpriced apartment, I booked a flight to Santorini. First class, charged to the emergency credit card I'd opened that afternoon. If Jackson wanted freedom, he could have it. All of it. Freedom from our marriage, from our shared assets, from any claim to the life we'd built. I packed light but strategically. The jewelry he'd bought me over the years. Guilt gifts, I realized now. My passport. The printed emails. Our wedding album, which I'd decide what to do with later. Before leaving, I wrote my own note. Unlike his 7 words, mine required more. Dear Jackson, you wanted freedom. I'm giving it to you. The divorce papers will be delivered to Priscilla's apartment tomorrow at 9 a.m. The house is off limits. I've changed the locks and filed a restraining order based on abandonment. Your clothes are in storage unit 47B at Secure Store on Highway 9. The first month is paid. After that, it's your problem. Your car has been returned. Your credit cards are cancelled. The joint account is frozen pending divorce proceedings. Your phone is disconnected. Don't look for me. I need peace. The woman you never really knew. I left it on the same counter held down by my wedding ring. The flight to Athens took 14 hours. I spent them drinking champagne and reading a book I'd bought at the airport. Something about a woman who murders her husband and gets away with it. Fiction but inspiring. From Athens, a smaller plane to Santorini. As we descended, the blue-domed churches and whitewashed buildings looked like a postcard from someone else's life. Someone who didn't know what betrayal tasted like. The hotel I'd booked was obscene, the kind of place Jackson would have called wasteful while secretly wanting to stay there. A cave suite carved into the cliff sides of OIA, with a private pool that seemed to spill into the Aegean Sea. The bathroom was bigger than Priscilla's entire apartment. I checked in under my maiden name, Edith Clearwater. It felt like shedding a skin. That first night, I sat on my terrace with a bottle of Assyrtiko, watching the sun melt into the sea like a broken egg yolk. My phone had been buzzing all day. Jackson had finally figured out how to borrow a phone. 27 missed calls. 43 texts that progressed from confused to angry to pleading to threatening. What have you done? This isn't funny, Edith. You can't just freeze our accounts. Where are you? We need to talk. Please. I'm sorry. You're going to regret this. Answer your phone. I deleted them all without reading past the previews. Then I blocked the number. Miranda Steele, my new Barracuda lawyer, sent updates twice a day. Jackson had been served. He'd tried to contest the restraining order. Failed. He'd attempted to unfreeze the accounts. Failed. He'd hired his own lawyer, some bottom feeder who specialized in defending deadbeat husbands. He's claiming abandonment, Miranda wrote. The irony is delicious. Don't worry, I have your note and his. No judge in the world will side with him. On my second day I met Andreas. He owned a restaurant tucked into the cliffs, away from the tourist traps. I'd wandered in by accident or maybe by fate. He was 50-something with silver hair and hands that moved like a penis as he prepared food. You're running from something, he said, not a question, as he poured me ouzo. Someone, I corrected. A man. My husband. Ex-husband. It's complicated. Andreas laughed, a sound like distant thunder. It always is. But you're here and he's not. That's what matters. We talked until the restaurant closed. He told me about his wife who died 5 years ago, how he'd almost sold everything and disappeared but stayed because her ghost was in the walls, in the kitchen, in the view from the terrace. Grief is like ouzo, he said. Too much at once will kill you. But small sips over time become manageable. Even pleasant in a strange way. I thought about that as I walked back to my hotel under a canopy of stars. Was I grieving? The marriage, certainly. The man I thought I'd married, absolutely. But the actual Jackson? The one who'd been slowly poisoning our life with his resentment and lies? Well, that man was already dead to me. On the third day everything changed. I was having breakfast on my terrace, Greek yogurt with honey and figs, when my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize, but the area code was from home. Mrs. Vincent? The voice was unfamiliar, official. Who is this? Detective Ramon Blackwood, State Police. I'm afraid I have some difficult news. The yogurt turned to paste in my mouth. What kind of news? Your husband has been reported missing by a Ms. Priscilla Danes. She says he left her apartment 3 days ago to handle some banking issues and never returned. His phone is off, his car is gone, and his credit cards aren't working. She's quite distraught. I set down my spoon carefully. I see. Ma'am, do you know where your husband might be? Detective, my husband left me a note 4 days ago saying he needed freedom and not to look for him. I filed for divorce, froze our joint accounts to protect my assets as my lawyer advised, and left for a previously planned vacation. I have no idea where he is and frankly I don't care. Pause. You froze the accounts? Yes. Completely legal during separation proceedings. And you're in Greece. Santorini specifically. I can send you my travel documents if needed. That might be helpful, yes. And you haven't heard from him? He's tried to call from various numbers. I haven't answered. I blocked him as my therapist recommended. I didn't have a therapist, but it sounded good. I see. Well, if you hear from him, I'll be sure not to answer, I said. Is that all, detective? For now, ma'am. Enjoy your vacation. But I couldn't. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones, the way I'd felt the affair before I'd confirmed it. A wrongness in the universe, like a piano with one key out of tune. I called Miranda. Have you heard anything from Jackson's lawyer? Not for 2 days. Why? I told her about the detective. She whistled low. That's interesting. Want me to poke around? Carefully. I don't want to seem concerned. Of course not. You're the abandoned wife living her best life in Greece. Speaking of which, send pictures. My Instagram needs envy-inducing content. But 3 hours later Miranda called back and her voice was different. Edith, you need to come home. Why? They found a body. The flight home felt like flying into a storm. Not meteorologically. The weather was perfect, cloudless skies all the way. But I could feel the turbulence waiting for me on the ground, the questions and accusations and investigations. Miranda met me at the airport with coffee and information. He's dead. Officially identified by dental records yesterday. They found him in a hotel room at the Grandview Motor Lodge off Route 87. Overdose, they think. Pills and alcohol. The Grandview was the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour, where desperation went to either consummate or die. Suicide? I asked, though the word felt strange in my mouth. Jackson was many things, but suicidal wasn't one of them. His ego was too big, his self-preservation too strong. That's the working theory. He checked in 3 days ago under a false name, paid cash. The maid found him when he didn't respond to checkout. 3 days ago. The day I left. Miranda gave me a sharp look. You were already on a plane. I've confirmed your alibi 6 ways to Sunday. You're clean. Clean. As if I was dirty to begin with. Detective Blackwood was waiting at my house. He was younger than his voice suggested, maybe 40, with the kind of tired eyes that had seen too much. Mrs. Vincent. Thank you for coming back. Miss Clearwater, I corrected. I'm taking my maiden name back. He nodded, making a note. I need to ask you some questions. We sat in my living room while he walked through the timeline. When did I find the note? When did I freeze the accounts? Why Greece? Did Jackson have a history of depression? Drug use? Did I know he'd been having an affair? I answered everything honestly. The note, the emails I'd found, the legal steps I'd taken to protect myself. I showed him the printed evidence, Jackson's plan to leave me destitute. So you were angry, he said, not really a question. I was devastated, I corrected. Then angry. Then practical. I did what any woman would do. I protected myself and left to clear my head. Most women wouldn't fly to Greece. Most women don't find out their husband has been planning to abandon them for months. I needed distance. He studied me for a long moment. I met his gaze steadily, letting him see the abandoned wife, the grieving widow, the woman who'd done nothing but react to her husband's cruelty. The pills he took, Blackwood said finally. They were Ambien. Prescription. But not his prescription. My heart skipped once, then steadied. Whose? That's what we're trying to determine. The bottle had no label. Ambien. Jackson had terrible insomnia, had for years. He tried everything. Melatonin, meditation, white noise machines. But he refused to take prescription medication. Said it made him feel out of control. He didn't like pills, I said. Wouldn't even take aspirin. People do unexpected things when they're desperate. According to Ms. Danes, he was extremely distressed about the divorce, the frozen accounts. He felt trapped. He felt trapped. The man who'd been planning his escape for 6 months felt trapped when his escape route was cut off. Is she a suspect? I asked, perhaps too eagerly. Blackwood's mouth twitched. Everyone's a suspect until they're not. But she has an alibi. She was at work when he died, presentation to 40 people. Of course she was. What about cameras? The hotel must have cameras. Broken. Have been for months. The place isn't exactly the Ritz. After Blackwood left, I sat in my empty house and tried to feel something. Sadness. Relief. Guilt. But there was nothing but a hollow space where emotions should be, like a tooth had been pulled and my tongue kept finding the gap. The funeral was 3 days later. I wore black because it was expected, not because I was mourning. Priscilla showed up, which took nerve. She was prettier than her photos. That effortless California blonde beauty that looked like it came from good genes rather than good doctors. She approached me after the service, mascara running in artistic streaks. I'm sorry, she said. For which part? She flinched. All of it. I didn't mean. We didn't mean for it to happen. Affairs don't just happen, I said quietly. They're a series of choices. You both made yours. He loved you, she said, and it sounded like she was trying to convince herself. He just felt suffocated. By what? My support? My loyalty? My working 2 jobs so he could pursue his MBA? What exactly was suffocating about me loving him? She didn't have an answer. They never do. The investigation lasted 2 weeks. They interviewed everyone. Me, Priscilla, Jackson's coworkers, the hotel staff, even Andreas and Santorini. That was embarrassing. They pulled financial records, phone records, medical records. What they found was a man in crisis. The joint account he'd opened with Priscilla had been emptied the day he disappeared. $15,000 in cash withdrawn in 3 separate transactions from different ATMs. The maximum daily limit. He tried to buy a plane ticket to Costa Rica, but the credit card was declined. He'd pawned his Rolex, my anniversary gift, for $8,000. He was running, Blackwood told me over coffee. We'd developed an odd friendship during the investigation, bonded by the strange intimacy of dissecting a life. From what? Everything seems like. The divorce would have ruined him financially. Maryland is an adultery state. With your evidence, he'd have been lucky to keep his shoes. His job was on the line too. Turns out Ms. Danes wasn't his first office romance. HR had a file. I thought about all those late nights, all those work trips. How many Priscillas had there been? So he killed himself? Blackwood shrugged. That's the official finding. Desperate man, no way out, makes a permanent solution to temporary problems. But something in his voice suggested doubt. You don't believe it? I believe the evidence. But, the Ambien. We never found out where it came from. His prints were on the bottle, but so were partials we couldn't identify. Could be from a dealer, could be from anywhere. You think someone killed him? I think a desperate man did desperate things and paid the price. Whether someone helped him along. Another shrug. Without evidence, it's just speculation. He left it there, but the seed was planted. Who would want Jackson dead? Priscilla? She'd lost her meal ticket, her escape plan. She was still texting him when he died, increasingly frantic messages about where he was, what they were going to do. Me. I was 1,000 miles away with an airtight alibi. Who else? The answer came from an unexpected source. 2 weeks after the funeral, I was cleaning out Jackson's office. I'd been putting it off, but the lawyers needed documents and I needed closure. Or something like it. In his desk drawer, under a false bottom I didn't know existed, I found a second phone. A burner, the kind you buy at convenience stores with cash. The battery was dead, but I charged it and waited. When it powered on, there were 17 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize and 1 voicemail. The voice was female, older, cigarette rough. You bastard. You think you can just disappear? After everything? I know about your little girlfriend, your little escape plan. You owe me, Jackson. And I always collect my debts. The calls were from the day he died. I searched the phone's history. Dozens of texts over the past year, all with code names and cryptic messages. But one thread made everything clear. Package delivered. 50K by Friday or I tell your wife everything. Got 15K. Rest coming. Not enough. Interest is 10% weekly. Please. I need more time. Time's up. Pay or pay consequences. Jackson had been gambling. Not casinos or sports. Underground poker games, the kind run by people who break fingers for late payments. He owed $50,000 to someone called the landlady. I gave the phone to Blackwood. He called me 3 days later. The landlady is Maxine Kruger. Runs high-stakes games out of a warehouse in Baltimore. We've been trying to nail her for years. Did she? She has an alibi. Was running a game with 30 witnesses when Jackson died. But. There was always a but with Blackwood. One of her enforcers, guy named Paulie Torino, was spotted at the Grandview that night. Claims he was there for personal reasons, but can't produce the woman he was supposedly meeting. So Jackson was murdered? Officially. Still suicide. Unofficially. Maxine probably had him killed or scared him so badly he killed himself. Same result either way. What happens now? Now. Nothing. We can't prove murder without evidence. Maxine walks, Torino walks, case closed. But it wasn't closed. Not for me. I started visiting the casino where Maxine recruited players. Not to gamble. I'd learned that lesson watching Jackson's destruction, but to watch. To learn. She was there every Friday night, holding court in the VIP section like a queen among peasants. 60-something, silver hair in a severe bob, wearing suits that cost more than most people's cars. She had a laugh like breaking glass and eyes like a shark's, dead black, always moving, always hunting. It took 3 weeks before she noticed me. You're Vincent's widow, she said, appearing at my table where I nursed a martini. Yes. Sorry for your loss. She didn't sound sorry. He sounded amused. Are you? She sat down uninvited, lighting a cigarette despite the no-smoking signs. Nobody told Maxine Kruger she couldn't smoke. Your husband owed me money. My husband owed a lot of people a lot of things. $50,000 to be exact. Well, you'll have to take that up with his estate, which consists of about $3,000 and a storage unit full of clothes. He studied me through the smoke. You're different than I expected. How so? Jackson described you as weak. Pathetic, I think was the word he used. The words should have hurt, but they didn't. They were just sounds, meaningless noise from a dead man's mouth. Jackson saw what he wanted to see. Indeed. I offered him a way out. One last game. Double or nothing. And he lost. Spectacularly. Could have walked away free and clear, but he went all in on a pair of threes. That sounded like Jackson. Always convinced he could bluff his way through anything. Is that why you killed him? She laughed, that broken glass sound. If I killed everyone who owed me money, I'd have no customers left. Bad for business. So you had someone else do it. Prove it. I couldn't, of course. But sitting there watching her smoke with that satisfied smirk, I realized I didn't care about justice anymore. Jackson was dead. Whether by his own hand or someone else's, he'd brought it on himself. I have a proposition, I said. Her eyebrows rose. Oh. The life insurance. It pays out next month. Suicide clause has passed. $500,000. I'm listening. I'll give you your $50,000. In exchange, you tell me the truth. All of it. What happened that night? She considered, tapping ash into her empty glass. And if the truth isn't what you want to hear? Then at least I'll know. We met a month later in a parking garage like something from a movie. I handed her a cashier's check. He handed me the truth. Jackson came to me that night begging. Said his wife had cut him off, frozen everything. He had 15 grand in cash and a sob story about starting over. I don't do sob stories. So you killed him? I gave him a choice. Pay in full by midnight or take the pills. Make it look like suicide, save everyone the mess of a murder investigation. You gave him the Ambien? Polly did. Jackson took them himself. Washed them down with a bottle of vodka while Polly watched. Your husband was a coward, Mrs. Vincent. When pushed, he chose the easy way out. Always did. I should have felt something. Rage maybe. Her. But all I felt was tired. Why tell me? Because you paid. And because I respect you. You did what needed doing, protected yourself, cut him loose. More women should be like you. As she walked away, her heels echoing in the concrete cave, she turned back. For what it's worth, he talked about you at the end. Said he was sorry. Said you deserved better. I did, I agreed. 6 months have passed since that night in the parking garage. The house on Crescent Ridge sold for above asking price. A young couple with twins, eager to fill those rooms with laughter instead of silence. I left the roses for them, hoping they'd have better luck. I moved downtown to a loft with exposed brick and windows that face the sunrise. There's no garden, but I keep orchids on the windowsill. They're harder to grow than roses, requiring precise care and attention. But when they bloom, they're spectacular. The life insurance money minus Maxine's cut went into a trust. Not for me. I don't want money tainted by blood, even blood as cold as Jackson's. It funds scholarships now for women going back to school after divorce. The Edith Clearwater Fund for New Beginnings. This year, 12 women will get their degrees because my husband couldn't keep his promises or pay his debts. I still work at the library, but I've been promoted to regional director. My little library job now oversees 7 branches and a staff of 80. Dolores jokes that I came back from Greece a different person. She's not wrong. Andreas writes me letters. Real letters on paper that smells like olive oil and sea salt. He tells me about the restaurant, about the tourists who come and go, about the way the light changes with the seasons. He's invited me back, but I'm not ready. Maybe next year. Maybe never. Some places are meant to be perfect memories, untouched by return. Detective Blackwood stops by sometimes for coffee. We don't talk about Jackson or the case. We talk about books. He's a mystery buff, predictably, and his daughter who's applying to colleges. There's something there, a possibility, but neither of us is ready to name it. Priscilla moved to Seattle anyway. I heard through the professional grapevine that she's working at a startup, engaged to one of the founders. I hope she's learned something, but I doubt it. People like her and Jackson don't learn. They just find new people to disappoint. I found something while packing up the loft last week. I'm moving again to a house this time, something with a yard for the dog I'm thinking of getting. It was tucked into a book I hadn't opened since college. A photo from our second date. Jackson and me at a carnival, both of us laughing at something off camera. We looked so young, so convinced that love was enough. I stared at it for a long time, trying to remember that girl, that version of me who believed in forevers and always. She feels like a stranger now, someone I might pass on the street without recognizing. I kept the photo, tucked it back into the book. Not as a memorial or a reminder, but as evidence. Evidence that I had loved completely once, had given everything I had to give. The fact that it was given to the wrong person doesn't diminish the gift. It just means I'll be more careful about who receives it next time. There is a next time. But I haven't told you everything. There's one more piece to this puzzle, one more secret that I've kept even from Blackwood, even from Miranda, even from the diary I started keeping after Jackson died. The night before I left for Santorini, I didn't just pack and leave. I made one stop. The Grandview Motor Lodge was exactly as depressing as you'd expect. Water-stained ceilings, carpet that crunched underfoot, the smell of decades of desperation soaked into the walls. The night clerk was a kid, maybe 19, with acne scars and eyes that had already seen too much. "I need a room," I said, sliding cash across the counter. He didn't ask for ID, didn't ask questions. Places like the Grandview never do. "Room 237, he said, handing me a key. An actual key, not a card. "Ice machine's broken. Vending machine takes quarters only." The room smelled like bleach and broken dreams. I sat on the bed, springs creaking under my weight, and made a phone call. "It's done," I said when Maxine answered. "You sure about this?" He made his choice when he wrote that note. I'm just helping him follow through. "The pills are in the nightstand drawer. Make sure he takes them all." "He will." "And you'll be gone?" "Flight leaves in 3 hours." "Good. Clean slate for everyone." But here's what really happened. I never went to that hotel room. That conversation never took place. The night clerk, if questioned, wouldn't remember me because I was never there. I was at home, packing, preparing for my trip to Santorini, nursing a broken heart and a rage that could have burned down the world. The truth, the real truth, is simpler and more complicated than any murder plot. Jackson killed himself. No one forced pills down his throat. No one held a gun to his head. He killed himself the day he decided that freedom was worth more than his promises, that a new life with Priscilla was worth destroying the one we'd built. But did I know he was desperate? Yes. Did I know freezing the accounts would trap him? Yes. Did I know about his gambling debts? I suspected. Did I know what kind of people he owed money to? I'd made it my business to know. Did I know what would happen when he couldn't pay? I hoped. I didn't kill my husband. But I didn't save him either. I created the perfect storm, cut off his resources, exposed his exit route, left him with nowhere to run except into the arms of people who don't accept IOUs. Then I flew to Santorini and waited for the inevitable. Call it murder by indifference. Call it assisted suicide by abandonment. Call it whatever helps you sleep at night. I call it justice. Yesterday, on the anniversary of Jackson's death, I visited his grave for the first time. The headstone is simple, gray granite with just his name and dates. No beloved husband or devoted son. His parents, who blamed me for not seeing the signs, for leaving when he needed me most, had kept it basic. They'd wanted to put "taken too soon," but I'd threatened to contest it. 53 years wasn't too soon for a man who'd been slowly poisoning everyone around him. I brought flowers, not roses but white chrysanthemums. The death flower in many cultures. Appropriate, I thought. Someone else had been there recently. Fresh carnations, the grocery store kind, laid against the stone. Priscilla probably still playing the grieving mistress. I stood there for a long time, not talking to him. I don't believe the dead listen, but thinking about the living. About the women who stay with men who treat them like furniture, comfortable but replaceable. About the men who think freedom means free from consequences. About the vows we make and break and remake. "You know, I finally understood your note," I said aloud, surprising myself. "Don't look for me. I need freedom." "But you got the pronouns wrong. It should have been, don't look for me. You need freedom." Because that's what leaving gave me. Freedom from trying to be small enough to fit in your pocket, quiet enough not to disturb your ego, grateful enough for scraps of affection. The wind picked up, scattering leaves across the grave. One landed on the headstone covering his name. I left it there. As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed. Andreas again, a photo this time. The sunset from his restaurant, the sea golden and endless. "The view is here when you are ready," he'd written. I sat in my car for a moment looking at that photo, then back at the cemetery spreading out like a garden of regrets. All these people loved and lost, mourned and forgotten. All these stories that ended with a date on a stone. But mine wasn't ending. It was beginning. I texted Andreas back. "Maybe sooner than you think." Then I drove home to my loft with its orchids and exposed brick, to my life that was mine alone. On the way I passed the Grandview Motor Lodge. It had been condemned last month, scheduled for demolition. Soon it would be just another empty lot, another erased crime scene, another place where someone's story ended. But not mine. Epilogue, freedom. It's been 2 years now. I'm writing this from Andreas's restaurant in Santorini. Not visiting, living. I moved here 6 months ago after selling everything that tied me to that other life. The library gave me a glowing recommendation for a position at the cultural center here, cataloging and preserving ancient texts. My Greek is terrible but improving. Andreas and I aren't together, not in the traditional sense. We're two people who understand that love isn't possession, that freedom isn't abandonment, that you can share a life without losing yourself in it. He cooks, I read to him while he preps. He tells stories about the customers, I help with the books. We sleep in separate houses but share our mornings over coffee so strong it could wake the dead. Though not all dead should be woken. Miranda sends updates occasionally. Maxine Kruger was finally arrested, though not for Jackson. Tax evasion of all things. Polly Torino turned state's evidence and is in witness protection somewhere in Nebraska. The Grandview Motor Lodge is now a parking lot for a new shopping center. Priscilla had a baby last year. A boy. She posted about it on social media with hashtags like #blessed and #miraclebaby. I wonder if she tells him about the man who almost was his father, the one who chose pills and vodka over promise and possibility. Probably not. We all revise our histories to make them bearable. Detective Blackwood retired early, opened a bookstore specializing in true crime. He sent me a card last Christmas with a note. Some cases solve themselves. Others we solve by walking away. I think he knows more than he ever let on. I think he decided some truths aren't worth the price of proving them. The scholarship fund has helped 37 women so far. I get letters sometimes, photos of graduations, new jobs, new lives built from the ashes of old ones. One woman wrote, "You saved my life." But I didn't. She saved herself. The money just made it easier. I've been thinking about forgiveness lately. Not for Jackson, he's beyond needing it, but for myself. For the woman who loved badly, who stayed too long, who confused sacrifice with love. For the woman who knew what would happen when she froze those accounts and did it anyway. For the woman who flew to Greece while her husband swallowed pills in a cheap motel room. I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive her. But I'm learning to live with her, this darker version of myself who emerged when pushed too far. She's part of me now, like scar tissue, tougher than the original skin. Last week I received a package with no return address. Inside was Jackson's wedding ring, the one I'd left on the counter with my note. There was a message: "Thought you should have this. To remember or to forget. Your choice." B. Blackwood. It had to be. I held that ring for a long time, feeling its weight, still so light for something that had once meant everything. I thought about throwing it into the sea, but that seemed too dramatic, too final. Instead, I took it to a jeweler in town and had it melted down, reformed into something new. It's a pendant now, abstract, unrecognizable. I wear it sometimes, this transformed promise, this metamorphosed lie. People ask if I ever regret leaving that day, if I wish I'd stayed and fought for my marriage. The answer is no. But sometimes, late at night when the sea is loud and sleep is distant, I wonder about parallel universes. Is there a world where Jackson chose differently? Where he came home that morning instead of leaving a note? Where we worked through the affair, the gambling, the slow erosion of love? Maybe. But in that world I never would have learned my own strength. Never would have discovered that I could be brutal when cornered, calculating when betrayed. Never would have found out that the sweet, accommodating Edith was just a costume I wore, and underneath was someone far more dangerous. Someone who could orchestrate her husband's destruction with a few phone calls and a plane ticket. Someone who could watch him fall and feel nothing but relief. Someone who could build a new life on the ashes of the old without looking back. Jackson wanted freedom. In the end we both got it. His came in a bottle of pills and a checkout from a world that had become too complicated to navigate. Mine came in the form of a revelation. That love without respect is just beautiful slavery, and I was done being anyone's prisoner. The sun is setting now, painting the sky in shades of vengeance. Blood orange, bruise purple, the gold of wedding rings and broken promises. Andreas is calling me to taste tonight's special. Something with lamb and lemon and love that doesn't demand surrender. I close this laptop, this confession, this truth that no one will ever read. Tomorrow I'll delete it all, every word, and let the story exist only in the minds of those who lived it. But tonight I needed to write it down, to see it in black and white, to acknowledge what I did and didn't do, what I became when pushed past my breaking point. My name is Edith Clearwater. I was married to a man who left me a 7-word note that changed everything. He wanted freedom, so I gave it to him. All of it. More than he could handle. And in the end, that's the best revenge of all. Giving someone exactly what they asked for, then watching them choke on it. The waves are calling now, whispering secrets in a language older than marriage, older than betrayal. I walk toward them, my feet bare on ancient stones, the transformed wedding ring cool against my throat. Behind me, the lights of the restaurant glow warm and welcoming. Ahead, the sea stretches infinite and dark, keeping its secrets, swallowing the sun. I stand between them, the warmth and the void, the known and the unknown, the woman I was and the woman I've become, and I choose. I choose the warmth. I choose the light. I choose the life I built from the wreckage of the one that was taken from me. But I keep one foot pointing toward the sea, toward the darkness, toward the part of me that knows how to destroy when destruction is needed. Because sometimes, the only way to survive betrayal is to become someone capable of betraying in return. And sometimes, the only freedom worth having is the kind you take for yourself with your own hands regardless of the cost. Jackson taught me that. It's the only gift he ever gave me that was worth keeping.